Chapter 4, Economics, Section 3. In this video, we'll be discussing elasticity of demand. Up to this point, Section 1, we introduce demand, a schedule, a curve. In Section 2, we focus on the different shifts that take place. And on Section 3, we're focusing on something called elasticity of demand. What it is, it's focusing on behavior of people when the price changes. So let's define elasticity. A measure of how consumers respond to price changes. So when a price changes, what is people's response? Do they continue to buy it, or do they look for something else? Do they have a change in thought process because it's too much? There are certain items that are considered inelastic and things that are considered elastic. Inelastic, we would consider items that are not very sensitive to price change. For instance, you are buying a cookie at a la carte and they're $1, and the price increases to $1.10. Probably inelastic. You're not going to be outraged. You're not going to start a riot. You're not going to cause a ruckus over 10-cent increase in the cookie. Now, if the cookie now went from $1 to $5, or let's say even $10, this would be elastic because we're not going to pay $10 anymore for a cookie that may not be all that satisfying when it was $1. So we would look for a substitute. So inelastic means the price change does not affect us, or doesn't affect us enough to find a substitute. Elastic means the price changed enough that's going to cause us to look for a substitute. And then we have something called unitary elastic. This is where if we put it on a curve, this would be exactly in the middle. And when we do the calculation, we would get the number 1. This means it's a 50-50. It could go either way. So unitary elastic. These different methods we'll be sharing later. Factors affecting elasticity. Well, is there a substitute available for this? Well, if the cookie is now $10, a la carte, lunch, bringing lunch from home, snacks from home, there's so many options for substitutes that the price change would cause it to become elastic. How important is it to your budget? What % of your budget is spent on a category when it comes to this? So on the US, a price change in food would be very inelastic. We're going to buy food either way. But if you take a third world country, you would find that the price would increase, the number would increase when it comes to being elastic, because that means more of the money, resources, and the budget are being turned into that. So for instance, US, Canada, Western Europe, if we put it on a scale, we'd get about 0.15 in importance as far as food prices would be. Now, if you go to a third world like Nigeria or Bolivia, you would find that an increase in price would be 0.34. So the closer you get on the scale to 1, the more chance it's going to look for a substitute. As soon as we go 1.1 or above, the product is now elastic. Anything that's 1 is called unitary, and anything that is 0.9999 and below is considered inelastic. So that's these numbers that I'm getting from this. And then lastly, is it necessity versus luxury? Well, that comes down to the individual. What is your preference? Is it sports versus going to a music event? What is necessity? What is luxury? And that all depends on the consumer. Now, one thing that we could all agree upon, that we don't like it when the price increases, but it is something that's considered inelastic, is gasoline. And gasoline, there is no affordable substitute for the common consumer. Now, as we move forward, as things have changed over the years, even the last few years, we found that there's been introduction of E85 vehicles, hybrid vehicles, even electric vehicles. But it's still not enough to say that gasoline is elastic. We still are considered gasoline to be inelastic. So throughout history, it has a major impact on our consuming of our vehicle. 1970s, gas prices were extremely high. This is because there was an embargo, meaning no trade was coming into the U.S. for gasoline. It had an effect where it resulted in the creation of more gas-efficient cars. People began to carpool more. Public transportation increased because the gas prices were there. And then we go into 1980s, 2000. Gas prices were extremely cheap. I remember as a teenager seeing gas prices from anywhere from 99 to $1.35, somewhere in there for gas. So very cheap during that time. And then 2012, I put this date in here on purpose. We had gas prices all the way up to $4.36 in California. We had $3.99 in Minnesota. And so as a result of that, we saw another push for people to drive a more gas-efficient car. And the projection from 2012 was that gas prices would drop to $2. Well, even in the last few years here, we have seen the price of gasoline drop below $2, which has an impact. And if you look at the car trends over the 1970s all the way today, you'd find when the gas prices go down, obviously the value of small cars, gas-efficient cars, will increase. When gas is extremely cheap, or in addition to that, you would find pickups, SUVs, the price of those dropping. And then when you find that gas prices drop dramatically, well, then you have an increase in SUVs and trucks and things like that, and the gas-efficient car value goes down. So it all fluctuates when it comes to elasticity based on gasoline. From a business perspective, it is a very important tool. What is the maximum price that you could charge an individual to get the total revenue? You want to increase that revenue to your full capacity. Meaning, when you do that, why would you charge a lower price when people are willing to pay a higher price for something? So total revenue, the price of goods, the quantity sold, trying to figure out what is the maximum price you can get out of a consumer. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's not being dishonest or greedy. It's being smart when it comes to business, trying to maximize your prices. Now, take a look at this chart for a second. And let's say that you're being interviewed right now. And your manager wants you to be in charge of the store for this pizza parlor. And he wants to figure out what price should he set his pizza. All right, looking at this, obviously $1 and $6, it's completely out of the range. We don't want to go there. $2, we're bringing in total revenue of $500. $3 is $600. $4, $600. $5 is $500, and so on and so forth. The two answers that I typically get when I ask the question and when I take a poll is, would you sell the piece of pizza for $3 or would you sell it for $4? And it's usually split. We would look at that. Well, obviously, we want to go with $3 because that means there's 200 customers coming in. Well, we'd actually want to go with the $4. And the reason behind that is that you would have to hire less employees, you would have less pizza you'd have to make, and you're making the same amount of revenue. So there would be no incentive to lower the price because you're going to get the same value. So this is why gas stations, when gas prices drop slightly, we do not find a gas station across the street lowering their price by 20, 30 cents. They're only lowering it by a cent or two. That's all they need to incentivize people to go across the street and do this. On this last slide here, this one really gives a good visual of how elasticity and revenue work together. So focus on the top one, elastic demand. As the price is lowered, the law of demand, the total revenue rises. That's complete law of demand. If the price raised, then total revenue falls. That is for an elastic demand item. Now, an inelastic demand, if the price is lowered, then the total revenue is going to fall. If the price is raised, then total revenue rises. Again, inelastic means that there is no substitute or close enough substitute for the consumer to go and buy that or use that product or service instead. Versus an item that is elastic, like the cookie that we mentioned, if you raise the price too high, people look for a substitute. And in inelastic demand, that's gasoline. This is Chapter 4, Section 3 of Demand.